I want to talk about remote work. Is remote work going away? Make sure you tap into the Patreon. Link is in the description as well as pinned to the top of the chat.
This is how corporate America feels about remote work in 2023.
The laptop class is living in La La Land. It's messed up to assume that yes, they have to go to work, but you don't. It's not just a productivity thing. I think it's morally wrong.
Listen, it doesn't work for young kids. It doesn't work for spontaneity. It doesn't really work for management.
And this is how the corporate world felt about remote work in 2020, during the height of COVID-19.
The biggest advantages, I think, are access to large pools of talent who don't live around the big cities and aren't willing to move there.
Since we've all been forced into being remote now for 9 months, I think we've realized that if you have somebody in a particular location who's willing to work the hours to be able to collaborate, you can do it very effectively. So it's changed how we thought about hiring.
Let's pause here. Notice something? In fewer than 3 years, corporate leaders have reversed their approach to remote work, and it seems like this tactic has been working. The latest data from the Census Bureau found that fewer than 26% of U.S. households still have someone working from home. That's down from 37% in early 2021.
So the reason we're having this entire conversation about remote work dying is, first of all, because we kept thinking that we're going to bounce back to quote unquote normal. When the pandemic started and we had people working from home, the idea was this is very temporary and we were all going to come back.
So really what's changed the discussion about remote work is the slowdown in the labor market. There are a lot of employers out there who had suspicions about remote work from the start, and you can see that kind of by the timing of when people actually
The idea was this is very temporary and we were all going to come back.
So really what's changed the discussion about remote work is the slowdown in the labor market. There are a lot of employers out there who had suspicions about remote work from the start.
Thank God I was muted. Thank God I was muted because the zest is real talk. You see how God work in mysterious ways? I rewinded that for a reason. Oh, God. Look at God working in mysterious ways. Oh, my God. Yo, God got my back. God got my back. I ain't got nothing negative to say. I was talking reckless. I was crazy. I've been in that mode today for some reason. I don't know. Carried over into Sunday and then Sunday going into this. God be looking out for me. He said, Anton, let me mute you by mistake. I made a mistake and hit the mute button. I didn't even do it on purpose, obviously. Yo, it's crazy out in these streets. Look at the senior economist, Corey Kentega from LinkedIn, giving us investment advice about remote work. All right, let me. Yeah. Come on, Corey. Yeah, Bitcoin Brown, God be gotten, don't he? God be gotten. Good God Almighty. Hot Candy, I'm sorry. I know that you want me to be a better steward of my platform, and so God be looking out for me. Ain't he good? Ain't he good?
And you can see that kind of by the timing of when people actually went to being remote during the start of the pandemic. So the concerns that employers had about remote work were present all during the Great Reshuffle, but they didn't really have much of a choice. But with the emergency orders expiring for the pandemic this year, now they can actually start to bring people back and address some of those concerns that they might have about productivity.
Remote work was thrust upon us basically by the pandemic. Before the pandemic, remote work was pretty rare, so about 5% of days. We were forced to work from home. All managers and professionals were basically fully remote for much of 2020. And then it turned out it's worked really well.
Such as no commute, working in your sweatpants, doing your laundry between Zoom calls, but also just the savings in terms of time, in terms of money, in terms of your commute, in terms of being able to spend more time with your children or pick them up from school.
That's not what I heard from people. I'm going to be honest with you. That's not what I heard from people. What I heard from people with regard to remote work was it was a miserable. Maybe it was just the guys. Let me say that. A lot of guys that I heard was saying, Anton, I don't have no excuse to be able to get out of this house. I'm suffering. I'm dying out here. Yo, a lot of guys couldn't wait to get out of the crib. They could not wait to get out of the house because of remote work. It made a lot of relationships difficult. Real talk. Like, it was cool at first because you ain't got to commute. You ain't got to worry about none of that. But then people start getting stir crazy. And so I was an advocate for people getting out the house because not only did it start ruining the fabric of commercial properties and the quality of our lives, and we wasn't able to network, and commercial real estate started suffering as a result of it and all of that. It also was ruining a lot of relationships because I think that you got to miss people in order for you to continue to have a great relationship with them. You do have to miss people. And so I can do this show anywhere. I'm much more productive down here in my studios, making sure that I have the right space, the right time, be able to spread out, go get inspiration. I can bring people in order to interview them without having to have them in my crib and all of that. So remote work can be good, but there has to be a balance. And it's similar to, honestly, I equate it to what's going on in the EV gas thing, right? Because there's going to be a transition to where there's always going to be a part of your life. But I think that people are starting to embrace hybrids, some form of a hybrid, more than they're just going straight over into the EV revolution. Some people are jumping right into the EV revolution, but a lot of people still like gas cars. And so how do you ease them over there? Well, you can't just thrust it upon them. And we can debate what happened during the pandemic. But in reality, I've seen a lot of people suffering as a result of it because they truly didn't. Now, what they did do was they started to spend more money than they needed to, and they moved further away from their job. And then when their job said, yo, I want you to come back into the office, they was complaining about it because they had to go back, figure out a way to get back to the office. The job said, we ain't tell you to move. We ain't tell you to move to another state. We ain't tell you to move to another location. Remote work was never a part of our long-term goal. It was a possibility. It was what you did for the last 2 to 3 years, but we ain't tell you to move. And so when they tried to get back, right, or they bought more house than they could afford, and I also seen during that time, people were spending a lot of money paying $200,000 and $300,000. Well, not I didn't see that specifically. I heard about it. I seen people paying over $100,000 and $150,000 over asking price, bidding up these properties because money was cheap and people were looking to all get properties at the same time and inventory was low. So it's not all good. It's always a yin and a yang that comes along with that.
People quickly found ways to be productive, to continue communications together, and to keep collaborating together in whatever tools they could invest in to support that work and that teamwork.
As the world slowly started to open up, corporate America began to change its tune on remote work, so much so that some firms now even threaten to fire their employees if they don't show up at work.
Zoom, the company this is, now throwing in the towel on fully remote work.
Even Zoom, the video conferencing company that helped make the remote work boom happen in the first place, is also taking a hard line on return to office.
It's an abrupt shift from last year when it suggested a majority of its employees would work a hybrid schedule with just 2% working in person full time.
So some of the pushback remote work is driven by concerns about productivity. There have been some experimental studies that show that there's some productivity impact potentially from remote work. But those studies are also experiments, right?
I don't even know how you really measure that, right? Because I know people, well, really what all it really proved was that it's not that productivity increased. It was that people, productivity didn't increase. You wasn't doing nothing when you was at work anyway. That's the truth. Productivity did not increase. It's just that when you got home, half of y'all still couldn't make y'all meetings in the morning, and all you had to do was go from one room over to the other or to open up your laptop. Productivity did not increase. All they proved was that you wasn't as productive when you was in the office and you was messing around because it only took you 2 hours what you was getting paid 8 hours to do. And so what people started to do is they leveraged that productivity or the lack thereof, and they started doing more than one job at the same time. That's the truth. So when you see these statistics or these measurables, and they're using that to justify, hey, we should stay remote working or whatever like that, it could also work against you because it's not actually in truth. And so those that could take advantage of it or should have taken advantage of it, they did. And then other people just continued to chill out, slow motion, have a good time, leverage it, go out, move further out, all of this other type of stuff. A lot of people just used it to travel, work in a different space, right? So it just depends. It depends on the context, but I do think that, and I've largely seen there be a return back to work from most people, and then even the freeways are starting to be full again. Once the kids start going back to school and they start going in, you knew it was over for remote work. So remote work is not going away. For a lot of people, it's still going to be there, but they are still trying to force people to come back into the office. Cities are incentivizing companies to do so also because the commercial real estate market is in turmoil. And if you ever want to see the health of an economy, the commercial real estate market is one of the driving economic factors and forces that then show you exactly what's happening within that city. Inflation was going out of control because of a lot of factors that was self-inflicted wounds. But even me, right? At one point, I was even being incentivized to come into the office. And I said, no, sirree, that's not happening. That's not happening. You know, I took a position, and people actually laughed at me about it, but it's like free money. It's like free money. Because it allows me to continue to still be just as productive that I was before I took another position, because they made me an offer that I couldn't refuse. And that largely came from networking and somebody tapping in and saying, Anton, I want you to come and see what we're doing. I worked with you before. Hopefully you can add value into what we got going on. That person has since left the company and went over into another opportunity, but I'm still holding on because I don't want to go any further up because I would have to be more visible as far as the organization that I'm a part of. So yeah, man, remote work is here to stay, but it's going to be completely different. And for most people, they won't have access to it. Even people that I coach, they said, Anton, every position that they have available out here or that these recruiters are offering me is some form of a hybrid position. So, you know, make sure that y'all continue to make the adjustments, leverage the time that you have to get the most out of it, because you never know when it's going to be over. And then y'all got to go back and, no, this is not an old video. This is a video that just came out literally yesterday. Make sure that y'all make the most of your time so that y'all can run up that bag and then continue to reinvest in yourself, whether that be assets or you making more money, because that comes in a multitude of different ways.